Welcome to the Northwest Employers Podcast. I'm Kevin Collier, and today's subject will be artificial intelligence and how this can benefit the local government community going forward. We're joined today by our guests, Martin Neale, who is the Chief Executive of ICI AI, and Dwayne Johnson, who is a consultant with ICI AI and also the former Chief Exec of a local authority here within the Northwest. Morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I thought we'd begin by, first of all, asking questions around what AI is, what it isn't, and what forms AI comes in.
So AI is artificial intelligence, and it's a sort of collective noun, really, for lots of different forms of AI. The one that everybody's been talking about most recently is generative AI. But there are other elements to it, such as machine learning. There's visual AI now. So there's a whole variety of different forms of AI, and fundamentally AI is it's a mathematical construct. It's an algorithm that has been refined over many years, but most recently, since about the mid-80s, there's been a stream of AI that has led to ChatGPT and generative AI, and that is what's completely exploded and really taken off. Exciting everyone.
What is AI not? Because obviously there's still a lot of confusion around AI and a lot of speculation as to what the extent of its abilities are. What is AI not, and what are the things that it can't do?
Firstly, it's obviously not organic. It's a computer. At its heart, it runs on power. The limitations change frequently. So what I would have said a year ago about what it wasn't, I'm not saying now. So the most recent examples has been the addition of senses to AI. Most interaction to date has been essentially AI at a text level. And you can talk to it, but it's converting that into text. So it's essentially a text construct. What's been added most recently is what they're calling multimodal AI. It's another one for everyone to get their heads around. And multimodal AI essentially is AI in different forms, most specifically voice, video, and images. And you can think about that as extra senses. So it can now see, it can hear, and it can understand. And I saw a piece of tech the other day, which was just starting to appear, which are glasses, with the glasses linked to that AI. So for people who can't read or can't read signs, or who can't see, then the AI glasses is able essentially to inform them what's going on because it's got these additional senses. Likewise, it can hear and also tell people what it's seeing.
Brilliant. So lots of potential there.
Massive.
And that is the next question, and is how do you believe that AI will impact local government in the coming years?
Well, I already think it is impacting on local government. I think we're using AI in lots of different forms. And I think if you look at front of house customer services departments, lots of local authorities are now using AI because what it does a number of different functions really, which supports staff at the front line. So it's they're able to undertake lots of mundane tasks. It's able to answer quite complex questions now. When I first started with Martin last September, it could probably respond to a couple of hundred questions. Now it's into the thousands. It can respond if there's something that's on a website in a gigasecond. So I think it's there harnessing what it needs to in terms of local government. And lots of the work that we're doing with other local authorities and other organisations is about looking at its potential behind other departments to support what we do. So another example is about predictive data analysis, how we can use AI to speed decision making up, how we can use some of the tech and some of the numbers to be able to provide first-hand, real first data immediately. So I think there's lots of potential there for local government, and I think we'll see more development certainly in the next 12 to 24 months with AI.
I think just building on that, you've essentially, if you think about all of the public sector, but local government in particular, part of its remit is engaging with very large numbers of people across very complex range of subjects. And that creates a logistical challenge that most residents become frustrated with. It takes too long to engage with anyone, you're on the phone too long. What AI is able to do for local government is to essentially get that to in a way and at a time and at a price point that makes it possible for people to engage much more effectively.
And we know up in the Northwest, some of our member organisations have already started on that road of using AI. I know yourself and ICI AI have worked with local authorities already. Are there any specific examples that you can talk about where AI has really had an impact in local government?
Yeah, I think, Cheshire West have been using some of the services already, particularly customer services assistance. They're a very ambitious authority who are very keen to look at the potential for AI to support some of their frontline services. So they're very interested in looking how their planning department, how their social care departments, particularly adult social care, can be supported with some of their service delivery, etc. So what do we mean by that? So I think that the areas that most authorities seem to be interested in is how AI as a co-pilot can support a social worker with their with a lot of their work. So some of that might be about providing synopsis or information with lots of information that's available on files. Some of it's about more mundane tasks, about calendar work, about administrational work for those individuals. But that enables and frees up more social work time to be provided to clients, etc. So I think we're on the tip of the iceberg, to be honest. I think it's very early days. As I was saying before, I've only been supporting ICS for about the last 8 or 9 months, but just in that short period of time, the advances that AI is making is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think in terms of some of the other clients, Derby City Council are probably the furthest along the journey of AI transformation. We started working with Derby a couple of years ago now, and we've very successfully deployed a customer services AI assistant on the phone. So when you call Derby, the front door for Derby is the AI, and it's then able to either help you or transfer you to a member of staff who can, if it hasn't. But that gave them the confidence to take the next step, which was to think about the transformation of the council much more holistically. And we went through a process with them, which is what we're going through with Cheshire West now, where we identified all of the potential use cases that could be used in a local authority. And we identified 260 use cases, and they eventually selected 54, which was to form part of this transformation project for the council, with projected savings of something like £12 million over 2 years. So the opportunity with local government is definitely that journey. Most people will tend to start it with something that's perhaps slightly less impact until they've gained trust. And then once they've been through that, then what's certainly happening with Derby. In the case of Cheshire West was actually our first ever customer in local government. So they had one of our products 3-4 years ago. It actually helped them during COVID. So it was live with the first lockdown. And what they were able to do was to essentially take all of their staff on that first lockdown who would normally be taking inbound calls, and they let the assistant deal with all the inbound calls, and they used their personnel to do outbound calls to vulnerable people. We saw a 600% spike over that weekend when it was first announced.
Fantastic work, and again, just really showing the extent of AI and how it can benefit local governments. We did a survey across our membership earlier this year, and what that showed us is A lot of our members appreciate that this is going to have an impact. It is going to be something that they will engage with in the future. But not many had really taken that step into developing processes, policies, really putting in place governance around AI. What would be your advice for people who are at that, the beginning of this journey and looking to develop those processes?
Yeah, I think there's a number of characteristics and a number of things that need to be thought about. I think the first thing would be, what's the appetite, particularly amongst your elected members? Our elected members, do they understand what artificial intelligence is and what it can do and what it's not meant to do as well? I think the second thing is, how far advanced are you in your thinking and your understanding about digital and where it fits with your overall workforce strategy. So is it there? Do you see it as supplementing, complementing workforce? Have you got particular challenges? So we know that the opportunities for AI to support technical staff, so those people who may be dealing with lots of data or finance staff, there's huge opportunities for AI to be able to support those staff with those particular areas. So I think you've got to look at your overall workforce strategy as well. So they're features that I think are really important. I wouldn't get too concerned about whether or not you feel as though you're a tech-based organisation. I think at the end of the day, you've got to decide yourselves whether or not you think your customers, i.e. people in your communities, would welcome some support, potentially welcome some reduction in expenditure in some areas and potentially looking at council tax costs in the future, because there are clear efficiencies to be made here. But so I wouldn't get too concerned about things like that. And then I think the only other things are just make sure that you have a good understanding of some of the law, some of the ethical issues, and then some of the areas that clearly it's not meant to be undertaken. So it's not there to be replacing staff. It's not there to be looking at some of the social perspectives. So, for example, none of us want AI to be able to be looking at profiling of individuals or anything like that. So I would probably be working out some of those key features as you consider going forward. And then, of course, as Martin said already, there's already some really good examples out there of local authorities who are at the forefront of this technology. Get in touch with those local authorities, talk to them about some of the advantages and some of the areas that potentially that they might not want to consider at this stage.
Yeah, and I think from our perspective, part of what we do is help people through that journey of, how do they get ready to do this? How do they manage it? How do they set their ethics committees up in a certain way? So a part of the work stream that we engage with is helping organisations set up those teams. It is fundamentally predicated, what we do, on the basis that there's always a human in the loop. If the outcome of the process involves any kind of material change to anyone's life, for the better or for worse, then there's an AI. The AI has a human in the loop. So the AI might be making recommendations, but those recommendations will essentially go to somebody to make the decision. And the transparency of that process and how it was recorded is documented in a certain way and is sent back into the AI ethics committees, so that it can be scrutinised by who's ever part of the member.
And we've probably already started to touch upon this next question. That is really around, there are concerns about the safety of using AI, in relation to maintaining confidentiality, private information, security aspects, and does AI open us up more to cyber attacks, etc. What are some of the things people need to be thinking about in order to keep themselves safe when they are using AI, and are there some genuine risks that people need to be aware of?
I think people should always be focused and concerned about digital security, whatever it is. We do a huge amount of work on DPIA. In the case of Derby that I touched upon, we actually spent longer on doing the DPIA work than we did on gathering 260 odd use cases together. Every single piece of work that we're engaged in has its own DPIA policy, which again we assist in setting up. So from a compliance perspective, we're able to assist with it. In terms of whether or not it's creating more risk, then I guess ultimately it is, because bad operators will have it in their control, not in their control, but they'll be able to use it. And each time the technologies move on, so do the risks that are associated with them. And that's why we work very closely with Microsoft. The technology platforms sit on Microsoft servers. And a big part of what we are doing essentially is providing the support that the hypervendor is putting there. And Microsoft, it's not just AI they do. There's a huge amount of work that they do directly in terms of these threats. So people need to remain vigilant always in it. We are undertaking, in terms of our work, there is now another stream that we undertake, which is we have something that's called a red team that we've had to set up for the first time, where we're essentially ethically hacking our own systems as we write them. Because part of what you can do, and I think there was a recent press announcement with, I forget the name, they'll come to me in a second, a famous, one of the couriers actually, it'll come. So they put a new generation AI bot up, and someone had managed essentially to trick it going rogue. So that means you basically force it to forget what it had been taught and then start behaving in a way that that wasn't constrained. So these are the kind of new things that that you have to deal with, and these are the things that we're dealing with.
I think it's worthwhile adding to that as well about the EU Act. The United Kingdom have adopted the Act, and that's just been added to. So I think there's another layer of statute that I think is really important, and that talks about transparency, openness, etc. And I think within government, certainly, whatever happens after Thursday, I don't think this will change at all. There's an interdepartmental working group that oversees a lot of this. The regulators are particularly interested in AI, and I don't think they're interested because they want to over-regulate it, because they see that there's opportunity here to improve the delivery of outcomes for residents and in our communities. So I do think there's statute there as well that we have in place that I think gives that added layer of protection, certainly at this stage anyway.
I think, as I say, I think it's right to think about it and focus on it. But I think in truth, most of the real risks come from much older systems that that haven't been updated, that policies haven't been applied to. Most of these health service attacks that you see come from those areas. It's old on-premise systems that haven't been kept up to date.
Brilliant. And then one point that I wanted to touch upon is, obviously we've got a lot of speculation about what AI will do in the future, what the potential of it is to affect jobs, to affect workplaces, to affect society at large, and those some of those proposals are quite extreme. What is the true reality of artificial intelligence, and actually what it will do for society going forward, and also how it will impact on people and the workplace?
I think there's a sort of emotional view of that. We've all seen the Terminator and various films of that ilk, and most people have got those impressions in their mind. I think if you look at it objectively, the biggest study that I've seen is by McKinsey's, who looked at the predicted impact on worldwide jobs, and it was growth of it's about 300,000, I think, in the US was what they were predicting. And a lot of that stems from the fact that with every previous new generation of technology, every disruptive technology, what it tends to do is to make things easier to use, less expensive, and make people more aware of them. And that increases the size of the market that they're engaged with. So people tend to think about this as a piece of pie, that you're equally sharing up that same piece of pie, and if somebody else is now taking a slice, then you're going to get less. And in truth, that's not what happens. The pie gets bigger. So if you look at other industrial revolutions, so we looked at the motor manufacturing sector from the 70s, where robots were first introduced into the production line to date, and there are more people involved and employed in the automotive sector all up than there were then. If you look at a good example of this is e-commerce from about year 2000 to the present day. And although it's somewhat counterintuitive, if you look around at the town centres and see empty shops, you think, well, that's decimated it. But in fact, again, it's not true. There are way more people involved now in the retail and its associated supply chain than there were previously. So that said, just because that's always happened before doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen again, and no one really knows for sure. My own view is that I think what we'll see is a productivity explosion, because you are, for those who have worked with it, and I probably spend 25% of my working time is co-engaging with AI. We design products on it, we do all sorts of things with it. And my productivity is hugely greater than it was before. People using it will find the same sorts of things. The productivity increases. And I think you think about the productivity, so certain areas, we are a lot more productive as a business, but you think about, a farmer who doesn't have access perhaps to, in another country, perhaps doesn't have access to the latest information about what crops to plant, during a drought, then you've got access to it. You've got an expert on any given subject. So, I'm hopeful that what we'll see are, is more jobs. There'll be different jobs. It'll change, but if it's like all other industrial revolutions, then I would expect it to follow a similar path.
Yeah, and I think from a local government perspective, there's not a lot of research out there, Kevin, as you and I know, and I'll touch on that at the end. But if you look at the Topol review into health services, you look at the Health Foundation publication in November just last year, both of them have said, if you just look at our ageing population and what's happening just generally in terms of society, the forefronts, the improvements in medical, scientific advantage and everything that's out there supporting people, the Health Foundation found that by 2035, a lot of local authorities and health services, we're going to run out of staff. So whichever way we cut it, we're going to require something. I would believe it would be AI to support those qualified, trained staff to do their jobs and to make it easier for them. So I think the research that we have available seems to be suggesting that AI has a place in local government and particularly in terms of health services. And indeed, ICI AI, Martin's company, have commissioned me to do a piece of research in this particular area, focusing particularly around social care. We hope to be able to launch that over the summer and give some real good examples of evidence-based research in this particular field.
Excellent. Well, fascinating conversation. Again, really good examples of how AI is already being used and loads of potential of how it can support the local government community going forward. But thank you very much for your contributions and your insight. And yeah, it'd be great to see how this space develops going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you very much for joining us. We do hope that the episode has been useful. If you are interested in looking at any of our other podcasts, please find them at our website, www.nwemployers.org.uk. Thank you.